Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to our Midvale City Council meeting on this August the 24th. It's hard to believe we're at the end of summer when we had so much rain last week, but then you have to think back. Oh, wait a minute. We went through how many weeks of 100-plus temperatures? Yeah, we're ready for a change. We're ready for summer to say goodbye. But I want to welcome you all here. We, by tradition, begin with a Pledge of Allegiance, so I would like to ask you all to stand and pledge your allegiance to the flag with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I said we do that out of tradition. I may misspeak there. I think all of us repeat the pledge out of desire to express our confidence in a United States government, of which Utah is one of the states. And this city is a subdivision of the state of Utah. And so we try to perform the people's business as it relates to the city of Midvale. And sometimes our influence comes from beyond our city borders, but most issues we deal with are Midvale issues. So I want to welcome you all here. Rory, would you call the roll and see if we got everybody here?
Yes. Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Robinson? Here. Glover?
Here.
Gettle?
Here.
And Sperry.
Here.
Thank you. We'll now invite our police chief, Randy Thomas, to make a brief report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First of all, I want to thank you for our workshop discussion on the employee compensation issues that UPD, as well as all the other police agencies across the valley, are currently facing. It's definitely some new and uncharted frontier that we're going to be facing immediately, so I appreciate your support. We've had some really significant weather-related events lately, wind, rain. We won't call an earthquake a little while back a weather event, but certainly challenging for public safety, law enforcement, fire, and then public works. And I can say that the communication between all of us has been pretty seamless in these kind of short crisis events. The most recent with the flooding of Center Street and Wasatch. Real quick communication with public works. We were able to shut the roadway down, get the UDOT pumps going. It's just that day, the storm drains and storm systems apparently were well beyond their capacity. I've never seen a manhole cover float in the air, suspended about a foot in the air and hover until I pulled up to 80th and State that morning, and it was something else. But really short term, we shut down the roadway, called for barricades, and immediately got barricades to help us so we can free up our police to attend to business throughout the city. So kudos. Also kudos to staff reaching out to us and give us immediate notification on some of these incidents. It really does help us sometimes alleviate when there's a burden upon dispatch, and we can get things going quicker from inside the big machine. I want to point out that recently, in this last week, in fact, we've had a significant upswing in catalytic converter thefts. And these are high volume thefts where they're coming into some of the dealerships or commercial areas where box trucks and large trucks are parked, and it's really easy to slide under undetected in the middle of the night with the Sawzall and do significant damage and cause significant financial harm to some of our businesses in the city. So I would urge, if you see, it's not normal for people to be walking down in 2 in the morning with an exhaust pipe in their hand or perhaps a cutter. So as I always say, if you see something, say something. If you can give us a description and feel safe about it, keep your eyes on them until we can get on them. But this really bothers me. I've seen it trend other places across UPD jurisdiction as well as other cities, and it recently has hit us, and it hits us pretty hard. I was talking to our property crimes detectives, and I was told the salvage value on those is incredible, even to the point where some of these are actually being purchased and crated up in large crates and shipped overseas before they're eventually cashed out or sold out. So it's not necessarily, you know, one or two going down to a scrap metal place here in Utah or in Salt Lake. It can be significantly organized to where they're filling a container and shipping it overseas to eventually make their money. So we're hoping to get on top of that. I definitely have be on the lookout to our patrol detectives and patrolmen at night to look out for that. I want to point out that the 31st of August, all UPD motors are going to be doing training in the morning. After the training, they're going to come out to Midvale and saturate and do traffic enforcement. This will probably be from 9:30 in the morning till 11:30 to 12. So if it seems like our 2 motor officers grew into 12, it did. And what we're doing is kind of doing, the motor sergeant is doing that on a rotation basis. So when they get them all together to do their training, they'll do the training, and then they'll all go saturate one of our UPD jurisdictions. So be careful. We'll be out there looking for you. Fair warning, right? I do want to mention.
What day was that, Chief?
I'm sorry?
What day was that, did you say?
What time?
Any day.
Yeah.
I do want to mention also our crossing guards. I appreciate the city putting out on some of their social media that we are in need of part-time crossing guards. We have 2 of our Midvale crossings where the guards have gone on to other job or other opportunities in employment, and we are short, and that includes a substitute which can fill in some of those gaps. So if need be, we have to pull patrol officers off to fill those, and if we have a priority call going on when that shift comes on, sometimes those crosswalks may not be covered, so we would prefer not to have that happen. So if you know someone that needs a few extra bucks, we'd sure appreciate to have you a part of our team. I want to mention 2 attaboys for our officers, and the first one I'm just going to paraphrase what happened, and this is an officer giving kudos to his sergeant on a call last week where in one of our hotels we got a complaint that several children have been abandoned in one of the hotel rooms for days, and the oldest one being 8 years old. When we arrived on scene, made contact, we found that to be the true case. These children were starving. They were not being cared for. And, of course, we got DCFS involved. We got a hold of the parents. They responded. But in the meantime, and unbeknownst to me, the sergeant went over to McDonald's and out of his own pocket made sure these kids had their first meal in quite some time. And, you know, it's just good stuff like that when I hear, and I'm not saying UPD officers only do that. Firemen do that. You would do that. But to see these kids in just utter filth because they don't know any better and not being cared for by their parents, and, you know, one of our officers stepping up out of his pocket and being able to take care of them, that really touches my heart. And it's pretty unusual for the guys to say, "Hey, Chief, can you give this sergeant, you know, an attaboy?" So I absolutely did do that. Occasionally we'll award we call it a 4-hour coin. It basically means go take your wife to lunch, you know, and forget about the job for a few minutes. And so Sergeant Zitting, I just want to point out, did that, and I've made sure he gets kudos for that. It was well done on his part. The second one is I received a letter, and I haven't told Chief Larson about this, and I'm going to try to leave names out of it, but this is an email directed directly to me from a captain from Unified Fire Authority. It says, "I'm a captain with Unified Fire Authority at Station 125 in Midvale. First of all, I'd like to apologize for this long email. Second, I just want to let you know how much we enjoy working with UPD officers in Midvale. We get along so well and know each other and have each other's backs. Next, I'd like to recognize a few UPD officers for going above and beyond their duties. On the afternoon of July 20th, 2021, I was working at the station and received a phone call from my family member stating that my mom went to the doctor that morning complaining of leg pain from a calf injury. She had swelling in both legs and was having a hard time breathing and just walking around the room. The doctor gave her an albuterol treatment and assisted her to her car with a wheelchair, where he let her drive home by herself. My dad left work to meet my mom at her house to assist her out of the car. My dad got home and my mom never showed up, and she wouldn't answer her phone, which is very unusual. After a couple of hours, my dad searched and was unable to find her and contacted the rest of the family. I called my dad and told him to call the police so they could get the license plate number and description of her and have officers look. I left the station and arrived at my parents' house. My dad had already contacted Detective Hampton, who didn't think we had enough to get a successful phone ping. Now, if you don't know what a phone ping is, it's where the police actually contact the carrier and they try to get a lat-long location on the phone so we can narrow down where we can look. And sometimes just due to privacy and the circumstances, the carriers are very reluctant to help us with these things. I then contacted my good friend, UPD Officer Justin Litton, who was off duty, and asked what his thoughts were. He said he'd make some phone calls and see what he could do to help out. Officer Litton, Sergeant Shire, and Detective Hampton were able to ping my mom's phone and found her passed away in her running vehicle in a parking lot in Murray. Because of the relationship we were able to build on and off duty as public service providers in Midvale, I was able to contact a good friend, and he helped my family in a time of need. Not only did Officer Litton head up the inquiry of pinging her phone, but he and his wife showed up at my parents' house a couple days later and provided meals and gifts to the family. I'd like to thank and recognize these officers, especially Officer Litton, in finding my mom that day. And it goes on just a short time after that. But once again, that's the quality of officer and law enforcement and the relationship that our public servants have with each other in having each other's back. And that came while I was on vacation, and it was kind of it was just refreshing and uplifting after all the tragedy we see, and even the tragedy of this captain losing his mother, to see that there was a silver lining around that cloud. So
Thank you for sharing that.
absolutely. That's all I have to report tonight. Does the council or mayor have any questions for me?
Chief, would you mind just sending me the contact information for the officer who helped the children at the motels? I would like to just send a personal thank you to them.
Yeah, would you like me to text you his phone number?
Yeah. that'd
I
be
will
great.
do so. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Any update on like a potential propane tank bandit?
That bandit was identified, but no charges or apprehension at that time. It was when I don't know if you got the email reply, but it was the vehicle that he recognized, not so much the
Person.
fuzzy picture and calves. But
Yeah, it's just hard because it's hard for me to tell them like, disconnect your propane tank from your barbecue and bring it in your house. I mean, like that's not really what everyone wants in their neighborhood, but like a lot have just walked away. And, you know, it stinks.
it does, and it's really unusual in the summertime. In the wintertime is when we see that happen more often, and it's for
It's usually
heating.
For heating.
I don't know the value to stealing the cylinders. Another thing is you can chain lock them to the actual barbecue themselves.
Yeah.
Then the barbecue makes a lot of noise if they try to carry that down the street. But
a good point.
it's something that happens quite often. I mean, the same thing is like in apartments, bikes on decks. Those disappear all the time too. And a simple chain. I was actually talking to a Cottonwood Heights officer that came down and assisted us a couple of weeks ago, and they were having a real theft problem with vehicles, and I asked how they were being taken, and it's simply people leaving the cars unlocked in their driveway with the keys in them. It's not hard. I mean, and you'll see on the Ring doorbells that, on the social media, people going from car to car to car, and it's the ones that are unlocked they're getting in. And, whether they're stealing documents, change, chargers, they'll take whatever's in there. And a lot of times it doesn't make sense, but if you it's more of an opportunity for these thieves to do that. And it's frustrating,
Yep.
for sure.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
For responding.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Next part of our agenda is for public comments, and we invite the public to come forward if you'd like to comment on anything. We don't have any public, what do you call them? Public hearings, thank you. We don't have any public hearings tonight, so we won't ask you to reserve your comments to a public hearing, but if you have any comments that you'd like to make to the council, we invite you to come forward. Please state your name, and you have about 3 minutes time to express your thoughts. The microphone is now open.
Hi, my name is Shireen Hilliard. I represent AA, but I also represent Alateen, which is where I represent. I'm a child of an alcoholic. This city used to have the firehouse meetings, and I love the fire department because of that. They give me a safe place. My mom loved the state, and my dad never made it home from Vietnam. I respect the state. I also never had a father, so our Father, who art in heaven, is close to me. That's all I've had. She used to own American Legion Post 132, and so I knew a lot of officers of the state growing up. They weren't my father, but I also knew them to have alcoholism, and they were still wonderful men. And I represent them as well. And for my mom, she loved me so much she quit drinking. And she learned to love herself. And I would like to be able to do that again here in Midvale for the children as well as the alcoholic. There seems to be a lot of problems. And it would be good to be able to address this. And it would be an opportunity that I hope that all of you could look at in your hearts and your minds. Thanks.
Shireen, we have a method that if an organization wanted to use a room that is municipally owned, you can approach the city and lay out a plan, and it's a nominal fee, but we do have to charge for light and heat and et cetera.
Okay.
But we'd be glad to help. We'd be glad to help. Do you have any further comments?
I have another suggestion. The candlelight that helps the children, sorry if I'm taking too much time, is outside around a tree. If we could grass an area where the children could go. They don't have money, but we need to have a safe place that they could go and meet and stay sober and get the help that they need to get to the meetings. They don't want to be out in public. They don't want to be under lights. This is what the children are going through. And I represent the Candlelight meeting at Alano. And that's where I help most children and do all my funding, and I do everything out of charity. So think of that as well for the children to have. They need that. They don't have the money, and they're not going to tell their parents when they're looking for the help. So think of that and have that in mind. And they go around a tree at the Alano. They get together and they admit their faults without judgment. That's great. They're doing it. They're doing it without it. So we have to have a place for that.
Shireen, we could work out something.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
What was the name of the second organization?
Alateen is the one I represent. I'm a child of an alcoholic. I am 50 now, and I've spent my life making sure that the children have a place to go.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
My name is Owen Fisher, and I live over on Pioneer Street here in Midvale. Now, for the first time in 7 years, I've had to use city water on the outside of my house. I had to put in a drip line. My water usage has increased 20 times, from 2.5 to 20 units on my water bill because of Roland Garcia's inaction. There was a storm drain blocked and a broken storm drain and irrigation line, which as soon as I try to talk to anybody in the city says we're not responsible. Okay, at 7800 South in Harville. Roland says it is not a storm drain. He says them grates are snow grates in his deposition in a lawsuit. Okay, and won't clean and repair it. He says Midvale is not responsible for the line. The water users are that use the irrigation water. Due to health and time and cost, I cannot repair the line. If I tried to dig that out, you would be sending the paramedics within a half hour of me starting. I have heart problems. There are 8 people that it affects directly, all Midvale residences. 7 who use the irrigation water that has not had it, except for in July. And Sanders, who's in a lawsuit, so I don't want to say too much about it, who is repeatedly flooded due to the water backing up into her yard and house. Roland's solution: put a lock and chain on the weir so no one can use the water for irrigation. Indirectly, people gain from my irrigation water because I grow a large garden, and a lot of it goes down to the Copperview food pantry, and there used to be one over here by the church, St. Teresa's. They haven't had any this year because I haven't had irrigation water. My garden is only a third of what I normally put in. I put in 40 tomato plants, 20 zucchini plants. Well, okay. And his solution: put a lock and chain so we can't get the irrigation water because the line's broken and the drain is plugged. Mayor, I've tried to call your office 4 times. As soon as I tell that operator it's about the irrigation water, Midvale's not responsible. Hang up. That's why I'm here. I'm supposed to be at work right now. I had to take time off of my work. My employer has had to cover my work. Okay. City Council, please help me with this. I don't know what to do with Roland. He's uncooperative, and we need that line fixed. It's almost too late now in this year, but we can prepare for next year with our fall watering and deep watering. I used to, in years past, I've had 50 quarts of raspberries. This year I had 10. That's how it's affecting us. Please help us. I don't know what to do. Any questions? Any volunteers for a tour of this little area? I'll be glad to take you up there and meet you and show you the problem.
Do you know who the water master is on that line?
I was, but due to health and time, I could no longer do it.
So who is the water master?
There is none.
So
Midville's,
shouldn't-
Roland says I have to give the key to someone. Nobody will take the key to the weir.
So the water users need to get organized, it sounds to me.
We got it. How can we get the East Jordan Irrigation Company? Nobody. I was the water master. Nobody wants to be the water master. Ralph Stockton, who was before Roland, took care of it, and he took good care of the lines. And then Roland comes in, and we've had nothing but problems with it.
Well, and I guess I should say too, I mean, we can look into it a little bit more, but I think we've had some discussions, I don't know if it's about this particular one or other lines, but where we have similar issues where the responsibilities between what's the cities and what's private citizens, and trying to make sure that it's clear that we're putting responsibility where it's due. And then Roland has received instructions from us to do that. I can't speak on your specific instance right offhand, or incident.
Okay, it is a storm drain. He refuses to acknowledge it's a storm drain. If you go along 78th between 5th East and the Lower Canal, you will see storm drains on the south side of the road. But he calls them snow grates in his deposition. I don't know what the definition of a storm drain is. You know, right there where they're building them new houses, that or condos or whatever they're building.
If,
The water's backing up into the Sanders, it can't go downstream.
after this, if, Kyle, will you get his contact information, and then I'll follow back up, or have someone from Public Works follow back up with you, and I'll try to get a little bit more information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
First off, I'd like to thank you for your efforts. That's a wonderful I love when people use their own gardens to help people out. I try to do it too, but I don't have as much space as you probably have. But so most of you know me, but I'm Spencer Mears, and it's interesting. I haven't been able to actually see y'all in a long time. So I wanted to come to you today to talk about community gardens. In the past, we've talked about them before. I know the Mountain View Christian Assembly has had one. I don't know if they still do or not. 'Cause from what I understand, I guess there's some development going on there. But there have actually been multiple discussions on the Midvale Residents Forums lately about getting community gardens going. I've actually, a lot of people have really, I'm pretty pleased about it. They've stepped up saying, you know what, hey, I've got wood I can go donate. I've got experience in running community gardens. I want to help out. And I've had an opportunity to meet with several people online and personally to kind of get a feel for what we have available, where we can go with stuff, you know, what areas we think might be available to do this. Some of them that have been talked about is our new Adams Street Park. There's a lot of open space there, and it's been suggested maybe that might be a good test area for putting one like at my directions right, the north end, yeah, kind of right there by that north parking lot. One suggestion is about 25 feet from the sidewalk, just a small little area. We can try that on. From what I understand, I guess there's a little pocket park going in where the new fire station is, and we're thinking nice little place there. Also make it available for the firemen who are there. They can get fresh fruits and vegetables while they're on duty. They don't have to run down to the store and get stuff. It's been suggested some of the spaces, I don't know the name of it very well. I think it's Catalpa. Catalpa. You can tell English is not my best language.
It's a hard one.
I'm a programmer, not a speech
You
person.
have to put the emphasis on a different syllable and it works.
Exactly. But yeah, along there and along Oak, where it's become unfortunately a weed patch, which I know a lot of people there are very unhappy about, but you know, use those spaces. We've had people mention there's some property on Taft in Garden View. I know it's like, I think UDOT and UTA owned. Could be kind of a interesting way. I don't know if they would work with the city on that. And I've even had people mention, hey, you know what, I'd be happy to turn part of my front yard into a garden for people as they just come by if they want something, pick it, take it home, enjoy it. I know of a neighbor who has done that. His tree's out front. He's told people, you know, you just ask, you can take whatever you want. And I see people all the time picking stuff off his trees. So those are kind of a couple of locations. Let's see. So, and one of the people I met with, they were talking about, you know, they know the apartments don't have spaces. I know I've personally spoken to several people who would love to grow stuff with their apartment and there's no space there. These would be good opportunities for give them a space to grow stuff at. Some of the levels of boxes we're talking about were like low to the ground ones where families with young kids could work on their gardens together. Elevated ones for people who like might have back problems so they can't bend over. And let's see, I think those are called raised. And then there's the elevated ones where those who might be handicapped in a wheelchair or a walker, they could actually roll up underneath them and kind of like this, you know, they could sit right there and work on the garden. And that's good therapy for a lot of people like that. And then we also discussed community boxes, which would be larger areas like, I don't know how many are gardeners, but there's a thing called a Three Sisters garden. Like you grow corn and beans and squashes all together and they kind of all help each other grow, which take a little bit more space than we put in a standard little garden box. But stuff like that where it's, you have your own private ones and you have one that's kind of more for the community, ones that you could donate to the food pantry, all that kind of stuff. So we got people already who've said they want to donate lumber, who have plans on how to build them, who are familiar, who have been in community gardens before and been on their committees and helped out. We do know that it wouldn't be a thing that you would just do and just, you know, there's always kind of some financing, some have to pay for water and stuff like that. But I was able to find plans for doing anything from like 4x8 boxes for as little as $40 up to, some larger boxes. But we would prefer to be able to do stuff with materials we could get donated from like Home Depot, Lowe's, garden centers, whatever. There's a place called Chip Drop. We'll drop off chip wood mulch we could use for the base around the gardens, and fruit trees. And then one thought I had also was to also make it a little bit more fun. You can have these garden boxes and they're just there and people are playing their gardens, but also I've seen people will take old tires and paint them up and make them colorful and fun and plant stuff in there. Do the same thing as cinder blocks. Make fun little vertical walls of vines like grapes and stuff. So those were my ideas on a lot of that, and how we can create these gardens around the city to give these people therapeutic food and all that. And I just lost my train of thought there. But one thought on it is of course, too late to really start planning stuff now. But if this is something we could really get started now, get these boxes in place, the watering, so when next spring comes along, we are ready to open them up, let people start their planting and get these going. Any questions on any of that, or?
It sounds to me like you need to get an article in the Midvale Journal.
I thought about talking to them,
and get things, give a name, contact information. We're going to meet every fourth Thursday through the winter, something like that, and get yourself the numbers and organization you need to make things happen.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that is needed, but like I said, right now, unfortunately, I wish this topic had come up sooner, because like I said, we kind of need to get these boxes going so when spring hits, we're ready to go. We don't lose planting time. Right. So that is definitely one of the things I have thought about, because Midvale Journal has been great at highlighting things like this and getting people involved in things.
Right.
So just real quick, I asked some people that I've been speaking with if they could come tonight. Some of them weren't able to make it, so if I could just take a couple more minutes and read their comments. Ashley Thomas says, I am in full support of community gardens and think it would play a vital role not only in offering a space for community to come together, get to know each other, and work together, but also to help feed the community. I think small fruit forests, a few fruit-bearing trees in these spaces would also be fantastic. Lynette Phillips says,
If
yeah.
These comments are different from what you've already given,
these are
read them. If it's the same, then...
No, these are people who could not make it tonight, so they asked me to read their comments for them.
I know, but if it's the same as what you've said, we've heard it.
Okay, well,
I'm
yes,
okay
some of
if
them
the
have
other
some differences
council
in
members
it.
are okay.
How many more are there, Spencer?
I got 2.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Go for it.
Okay.
Let's just hear them.
Totally fine.
And it's just, to me, it's just the same as if they came, but they couldn't make it, so.
Go
And I'm trying to stay with them, do a reasonable time here. So Lynette Phillips says, as a resident who has lived in Midvale over 20 years, I've seen a lot of growth in our community. Obviously, much of the growth has come in the form of multifamily housing development. My work in healthcare and public health has taught me one of the most important factors in determining a person's long-term health is access to fresh fruits and vegetables. With so many of our new residents without access to a garden plot just outside their door, Midvale needs a solution. Providing community garden spaces throughout Midvale can help mitigate a social detriments of health, provide resources in receiving residents living in multifamily housing units, and help ensure a healthier, more robust community. Please consider converting multiple areas of city-owned property into community gardens. Thank you. And then I had one more that came in after I printed that off. I'll read hers. This is Nikki Stevenson. Says, in regards to a Midvale community garden, I am highly in favor of this project. As someone who loves gardening and someone who has not just participated, but held a board position in the Rose Park Community Garden, I have no doubt that our community would benefit from having one right here. Along with the benefits of community participation, a community garden is also a way to enable local families to bring fresh produce home to their families. While serving on the Rose Park Community Garden, I was in charge of the children's section. This gave the children opportunity to grow and learn about foods, plants, and processes of gardening. Establishing a community garden will take hard work and volunteers, but the rewards are abundantly clear. I'm happy to assist and provide outreach going into the future. Should we proceed with a garden for Midvale? Thank you for your time and consideration. I think we have a lot of support for it, so I don't know who would be a good person in the city to connect with on this.
I think that there are a couple of council members who probably would like to see this as an agenda item on a future meeting, so we can talk and see, because there's nothing preventing you now from doing this if you want. But if you're asking for city involvement in it, which, we could be supportive of, we just don't know because we've never talked about it as a council in probably 3 years or more. So it's been a while. If you and others are formally asking for the city to help you in this, we'll need to discuss it and
Right.
and bring it before the public to see how we can help you financially and, having the manpower as well to see, if it's going to be something that the city is going to manage, or are we going to use a group like the Wasatch Community Gardens group to manage it, so.
And that's why I'm coming to the city, because we can't just go over to a park and start planting stuff.
Yeah.
We do need to get permission
Yeah.
for some of this stuff. And
But,
so-
you mentioned people want to do it in
Yeah.
their own yards.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Don't wait for us.
And I know there are several people who do it already. These are just kind of a little bit more on a larger scale, more,
Community oriented.
community oriented. Because
Yeah.
I think some people probably would feel weird about going out into someone's property to do it versus on a public area.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
Right.
Well, I applaud you. I think it's a great thing, and let's get it going in
It's not just me, there's a lot of people, so
Right. I
I'm just a
understand that.
spokesperson.
I'm a grow boxer myself, and I think it's a worthwhile endeavor.
And I have another thing I'd like to just hand out to you guys real quick. These are kind of pictures of some examples I've seen. Just kind of give you a feel for what could be done. Have to ignore my printer running out of ink.
Uh-oh. You need magenta, I think.
And on there, I do have a website, livingmidvale.com/community gardens. You can see it says coming soon. I haven't had a chance to actually set that up, but it's where I want to make it available for people to have ideas of what they can do on their own and what we're
Thank you.
trying to get accomplished.
Thanks, Spencer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. Anyone else like to make comments to the council?
Hello, my name is Kenneth Mears, and I know for a fact that our city needs community gardens. The benefits of community gardens are so broad and numerous that I can't possibly list them all here tonight, but I will cover some of the most important reasons. For starters, community gardens allow the preservation of cultural heritage through food. Food is a key part of people's cultures regardless of background. Many traditional foods cannot be made solely with ingredients found in the local supermarket, but that can be grown in a place like a community garden. This is especially important to our city, as 35% of our population consists of people of diverse cultural heritage. And 15% of our population consists of immigrants, all of whom deserve the chance to preserve their heritage through food. In addition, 15% of Midvale's population lives below the poverty line, and as such, struggles to even purchase food. Community gardens allow for those in crisis for them to be able to get fresh, healthy food that can often make all the difference. Community gardens also provide a place for learning, connection, and equality. In a community garden, people are able to learn from one another, regardless of where they come from. Whether you're the CEO of a company or a 10-year-old kid, you're on the same level in a community garden and can connect over food, work, and playing in the dirt. Beyond this, a garden is a much more productive use of our limited water, as opposed to the pristine green lawns that don't produce anything edible. Beyond this, there is a surprisingly well-researched connection between community gardens and reduced crime rates. Cities that have had multiple community gardens experienced a significant decrease in crime over time. Planting more plants also reduces the pollution we experience in the air, as plants take carbon and other air pollutants and store them in the soil where they're useful to the plant. And as if the previously listed reasons are not enough, we need, as far as evidence-wise, community gardens have been shown to reduce stress, reduce the risk of dementia and memory loss later in life, reduce the effects of ADHD in children, and help promote mental healing from addiction and PTSD. Not only that, but chronic illnesses have been shown to be reduced by gardening, and people who garden tend to be more physically healthy from the physical effort it takes to maintain a garden. It's also a well-established fact that a person's environment shapes their habits. And as such, people who participate in community gardening tend to eat what they grow. And eating healthy foods grown in a community garden will reduce things like obesity and improve the overall quality of life for people here in Midvale. Now, I know my time here is coming to an end, so I just wanted to reaffirm my belief, based on the benefits of community gardening, that it is of the utmost importance that our city has community gardens for the physical, mental, and emotional health and overall quality of life of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you for your sustaining information.
Any questions or?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mears? Come forward.
Hi, my name is Robin Smith Sysom, and I too love Midvale, and I'd like to discuss a little bit about the ranked choice voting that has been recently passed here. So I've written things down, so I'm going to read it. You are in a very powerful position regarding our city's freedoms, and you may not know it. The most important job of a council member is to safeguard the vote in our city. It is more important than ordinances, developments, parades, or even budgets. While these things are important, the vote affects everyone and future generations. You hold a critical key regarding the future and validity of the vote, that FAIR Act vote, Utah ranked choice voting, and the globalists don't want you to know that. You have. You are in a position of power to defend freedom in our city and subsequently Utah. Voting is being systematically changed across the country, and it is a solution in search of a problem. Imagine if Americans think they are voting, but the election has the potential for manipulation from the ballot to reporting to auditing from the information that has been gathered, the evidence of lobbyists visiting cities, and the previous and current Utah County Clerks Awards, and ties to organizations promoting ranked choice voting. It is clear that cities in Utah are being financially incentivized to make decisions regarding their city's voting methods that may not be qualified or informed enough to make. These questions will help you target information that you need as council members to make the best decision or to undo decisions in the best interest of our city's voting freedoms. Regardless of whether you are currently undecided for or against ranked choice voting, here are a few questions that need to be answered. Why was Utah designated by the World Economic Forum as a beta test site to change our voting methods? I have a whole list of them, and in order to stay in the required 3 minutes, I will leave paper here. Somehow I don't have enough, but maybe you guys can get some.
If you'll provide it to our city recorder, she'll make copies and see that we all get one.
Thank you. I'll read a few more questions. This is an important, important thing to stop and really think about again, because it can be undone. Does the value of being able to vote your conscience outweigh the disenfranchising of certain votes that happen in multi-seat elections? Why do the Fair Vote lobbyist, the Utah County Clerk, and the Utah Deputy Director all get awards for progressing ranked choice voting throughout Utah County? Is it the role of elected officials to partner with interest groups who have an agenda and supply the equipment? Why is the United States Supreme Court ruling that established one person, one vote not good enough anymore? How can a candidate guarantee the results of the election? Would every candidate have to hire a professional auditor with their own equipment to verify the elections? What's wrong with in-person, on paper, with ID voting? It's the same, it's the most secure, easiest audit, best community building process for voting. Why would we continue down this path when the New York election using ranked choice voting is in such an incredible mess? Why would we use a method that has academic papers showing that it is confusing and disenfranchising majority groups? Do you know what ranked choice voting leads to? What is ranked choice voting? Utah election integrity is in question now more than ever. We need you, the voters, to be informed. Ranked choice sounds lovely in theory. It's not. Ranked choice voting is a scheme to disconnect elections from the voters and the issues. It allows candidates with marginal support from voters to win. It hinders true debates and dialogue among candidates. It eliminates genuine binary choices between two top-tier candidates. Ranked choice process removes protection against a tyranny of the majority, sifting outsiders, encouraging the broken two-party system, and disallowing plurality victories. This is a gateway to the state moving control of our vote from county precinct levels to the state. Utah ranked choice websites experiencing the election is a positive thing. Thinking that it is, it's not. What are the ways to retain a democratic republic? Decentralization. Every systematic problem ever seen in historical oppression comes from centralization, comes from big governments, comes from people saying that they're going to fix everyone's problem, and that's impossible. Please consider the relationship of power and centralization of voting in Utah. If they tell you they have it all streamlined, convenient, and cleaned up, we have to realize that any consolidation of the tallying of votes removes the responsibility and the verifiability from those that it affects the most. Voting in person, on paper, with ID, in the traditional method ensures the vote. The power for cities is taking responsibility for the vote. Please realize the power and the sacred, super sacred duty that you have to regard the vote for the people is in our own city. So if you please, Rory, will you make copies? Sure. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Robin.
Oh, this Saturday at Benyon Junior High, Stan Lockhart will be there, and so will Wendy Hart. They will discuss the pros and the cons. It will be at, I don't know, 11:30, 12 o'clock. I will be emailing each council member so that they have the opportunity to go and become richly fed about ranked choice voting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Robin. Are there others who would like to speak to the council this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on and have our council reports, beginning with Bryant Brown.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all of our Public Works and UPD and everything for handling our flooding issues and our trees coming down. You know, like last year we had an earthquake and thought, you know, that had to be the worst of it, and we kind of made out on that, and we're making up for it on the back end, it seems like, with all these other plague-like issues. But, you know, we respond quickly. It's a great thing about Midvale, so I appreciate, you know, everyone's work at all hours of the night, it seems like. I also want to thank Spencer for coming down. I totally agree with him. I've always been kind of preaching the community gardens. We talked a lot about it with the new area that's being built behind Zions Bank. And I think we all sort of said, you know, we want to eventually, you know, see where else they can go. You know, so I would like it to be a goal in Glenn's master plan, right, for the park master plan, that a certain percentage of our spaces, you know, should look towards some sort of community garden. I grow 16 different tomato plants now, and if we had a community garden, I would probably put, you know, 4 to 10 more, depending on how much space there was. So I think everything your son said was about how I feel about him. Got me through law school, you know, so, you know, I appreciate you guys coming down and talking about it. And the last thing I want to sort of mention is I hope maybe this is just a one-off, but Wasatch, whatever they're doing on Wasatch, they've cut into the road, I think, 40 times when I counted. And it's in like less than a mile, right? At that point, they should just tear the road up and finish the project quickly. Instead of having now it's just like a bunch of speed bumps because, you know, luckily we got them to at least put in, you know, a way to sort of level the plates or whatnot. But when they've moved on, they've done such a terrible job at filling the holes. It's like there's dips and bumps, and maybe people in cars don't recognize them as much as me when I ride on my bike. But, you know, at that point, yeah, you know, we need to like really drill down on a project. And if you're going to cut in 40 times in a mile, like, and take forever to do it, I don't even know what, like, people keep asking me what it is, and I don't even know if I totally know what they're working on.
It's
such
natural gas.
It's like a snail's, you know, they, you know, like mining the ground for the natural material. It's so slow. But I think the whole area would rather have them just tear up the road, do it quickly, and repave the whole road, opposed to this, like, I don't know if they're doing slip fixes or what, but it's pretty substantially damaging to the road. And maybe it's a one-off, and most people maybe don't do that kind of cut. But, you know, we should put pressure on those projects to like be a little bit better partners. You know, it just looks so haphazard. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Heidi Robinson.
I just wanted to echo my appreciation for UPD and Public Works for everything they've done over the last couple weeks and all of the madness with the trees and the weather, so, but that's all I have tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Paul Glover.
I'd like to echo exactly what's been said for Public Works and UPD. I know that in my district, there was a lot of trees down, probably the most trees of any of the districts. They were everywhere. And I know that they appreciate all the city stepped in to do. Just shows that as a city, we can respond to the things that are happening in our city. So I appreciate that, and I'm sure our citizens do too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dustin Gibbon.
Thanks, Mayor, I appreciate it. So a couple of things, a few common themes of issues that I've been receiving recently from constituents. Number one, there seems to be an appetite for us going back to allowing for online public comments, which I've seen from a number of people. I know when we came back full-time in person, we did away with those. The ability to email a public comment in or a comment for one of our public hearings. into Laura Magnus or another representative to read during our actual public meeting. And I thought, you know, I don't think that that's a bad idea. I think the more input we can receive from the public, the better, whether there's a pandemic or not. So I was just wondering if we might be able to go back to allowing for that.
We can, I'm just curious about other people's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't
Yeah.
just asking. If there's a sense from the council that we would entertain those types of comments, again, whether it be just for public comments or for public comments and for public hearings, both or one or neither.
One thing I struggle with it is I like the opportunity it gives for people, but just like when sometimes people come here, drop their comment and walk out before we can respond, you know, I don't know if it helps the person very much, right? When they just submit something into the web, we read it, even if we discuss it, it's like hard for us to have any sort of back and forth or meaningful discussion. And sometimes I think it almost makes them more mad at us because they're like, I've commented, and we could be like, hey, you know, we tried to respond to you on this issue. If you were here, you know, like if Spencer just sent that in, you know, I hope he feels that I agree with him now that he's here, right? But if he would have just walked out right afterwards, he would have, you know, missed that. So I have mixed emotions about it. I can be quite persuaded either way, but I think the one thing it loses is sort of the interaction piece.
Anyone, I can go on
I think
to
if
the next.
if they email in a comment, I would prefer that it gets forwarded to us. And then if we choose, we want to read it into the record, because you had some of those that, I mean, early on before we cut it down to so many words, right? They were reading public comments that people sent in for half hour on matters. And granted, some of them were pages and pages long, and we said, it's got to be this many words. But I prefer if they want it, they can send them to us, and if we think it's relevant during this time period, we could read one of those and then comment on it.
Okay. I think
I like that idea.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I like that. So could we just let the public know that that is a method for communicating during a public hearing or public comments if they choose to send it to the mayor or to Laura or to their council member or the whole council, as we have one tonight from someone who did just that? That'd be great.
Okay, we'll get it, we'll flesh out the language for it, and we'll
Okay.
post that.
Second thing, as I've been talking to folks who live in the avenues, specifically on any of the intersections of an avenue and Rio Grande, there's a lot of large truck traffic, and I know, Matt, I've talked to you about one particular instance, but, you know, that was just one person who called me a few weeks ago. As I've been meeting more people, seems to be a pretty common theme that trucks are going through on Rio Grande where they shouldn't because of their truckload. But then they kind of get into no man's land or no person's land, and they have to turn around or do something funky, and they inevitably take out fences back there for people, mostly on the corners, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and Rio Grande. So one of the solutions we talked about were having actual signs that say no truck traffic over a certain wait period, which a lot of the people who live in the avenues thought that there was somewhere, but there's not. But I think we could have multiple points, because we need one right around Center and Allen would be a good spot for one, for folks coming off Center Street. But also right down here would be good as well. Like,
Jeremy, do you remember, Glenn was already working on getting those signs made up. Do you remember, or did he mention to you what his timing was on getting those posted?
I'm not sure on the timeframe, but I can follow up.
I thought last week he said it was gonna be within a week, so, but he's on vacation right now, so, but I'll double check with him, but
Okay.
those were in progress.
and can you let me know when they're going in, just so I can follow up with the residents and let them know that we've done that? Because the initial conversation, you and I thought that there was one over here, and there's not, so need to get one there. as well. So probably at least two, you know, maybe a third if Glenn or any of his team, or the chief is raising his hand.
We also made contact with the business that's, and it found out it's actually his vendor's delivering product rather than the vendor. He's gonna have a talk with them, but he is called for us to enforce.
Okay, thank you. Third thing I wanted to mention, I completely support community gardens. I think we do need to have the discussion of how involved we want the city to be in it. And, you know, personally, I would love to be involved in it, but as a council member and as someone with a duty to the rest of the city financially, I don't think that we want to be as a big a part of it as a city, other than to promote it and get out there. You know, I don't want Glenn and his team like going over there and cleaning up, you know, tomatoes that someone left. And we don't want code enforcement going there. You know, they might have to, but one thing I would say, Spencer, is that the tire idea is great, but that's probably not something right now anyway that we should do, because I don't think it would fall into our current code. But anyway, so yeah, I would love to get that back on the agenda to talk about fully. The fourth and final thing I had, there was a lot of talk with people who I've met over the past few weeks about reestablishing, and again, it's something we've talked about, the beautification committee that we used to have here in Midvale. And I know the last time we talked about it, I think was pre-pandemic, and then pandemic happened, and, you know, things like the beautification committee kind of get put on a back burner. But, you know, there does seem to be a pretty good appetite from folks to reestablish that committee. They were talking about, you know, maybe 30 years ago, they would give out $25 gift certificates. Now that might, we might have to up that now, but, you know, it's just a good way, instead of, you know, sending out Officer Wayne to, you know, have someone clean up their yard. If you have some incentive to win an award, get a picture with the mayor, get your picture in the Midvale Journal for having the best yard, you know, that kind of thing mixes well with the community gardens, because, you know, it gets people out and doing stuff in their lawn, beautifying parts of Midvale. And it also gets an actual committee out there meeting people, and it just gives residents something to do in a city where our residents seem to be starved for something to do in the city, and we need to look at more avenues in which to get them some things to do. So if we could look into that, because I think it was something that the community council was looking into. But, you know, now that I've heard that for 4 years now, if they're not going to do it, then we need to do it. You know, someone needs to step up and get that done. So I'm hoping we can do that at some point soon. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Quinn Sperry.
Yeah, to follow up on a couple of those comments with the beautification, I agree. I think as long as I've been on the council, the community council's been talking about, you know, renewing the beautification committee, which I still think that's probably the right place, because there's been numerous discussions with the community council, what's their purpose, right? They trying to find something for them to do. So I think that seems like a great one for them to do. The people that are on that should be out talking to the community and helping bring issues to us. So that's a great way to get out there and to give them that purpose. I don't know that we have to create a new committee. I think we just need to probably hold their hand a little bit and get them out there. So the other thing, to follow up on Councilmember Brown's comments on the road cuts, I know before we used all the money from the bonds to redo the roads, there was some discussion and concern about, after we did the roads, they'd immediately come and cut into them and you know, destroy the integrity of some of those. And we talked about increasing the costs of an entity to cut into the roads for that. I don't recall, did we ever increase those? Does anybody remember?
We did,
Okay.
yeah. I think it was at the beginning of 2020, I think.
Okay. I mean, I agree. It's pretty frustrating that we spent millions of dollars to redo the roads, and then they're cut, and they don't care to put it back to the same quality. I mean, you know, anybody, it's not just you, anytime you go over there, they're not making it level, you know, it settles. So it's just not the same. So I don't know if we want to look at revisiting the amount of those fees or, you know, elevating the standard of how they have to repair it so that it's, you know, closer to what it was before they cut. I think that would help. And then the final thing is, you know, Councilmember Gettle mentioned there was a comment that came in from, oh no, I have two more things, sorry. There was a comment that came in from an individual talking about some of the issues with the community. I'm not going to go into everything she brought up, but we are addressing some of those. And like with a pool, you know, Matt, I know we've talked about that off and on, and you've had discussions with the county, and I know that some of that's still years away, but we do have that on at least on our goal list, that we're working towards that. She brought up ball fields for the high school. They are replacing the baseball fields at Hillcrest. It's just, they probably won't have them ready for another year, but they are working on those. So there are some of those things. Then we talked about community gardens was another thing she raised. So, you know, she's welcome to, hopefully we've addressed some of those, but she can reach out to us. She has my number. She can call me if she wants to talk through any of those further. And then, yes, final thing. I was talking to a business today over by the new entrance to the high school, and this is a company that was greatly concerned about once the new high school was fully established and all the cars that would be lining up to go into the new entrance. And UDOT told them that the new car lineup on South Union Avenue would only see an increase of like 17 vehicles, and we all told them that was a joke. And talking to the business today, I think it's several times that, and also brought up that people are now dropping all their kids off in front of some of the businesses there on 9th East and causing an issue. So they're ordering some signs to put out in front, but I know that's something, I don't know, Chief, if we need to have some law enforcement up there helping direct traffic so these high school kids aren't getting dropped off in the street. You know, it's a safety issue. But then also the potential of doing another traffic study. I know UDOT committed they would do another traffic study on that South Union Avenue, and realize how much of a joke their prior one was. So.
Having said that, I pick my kids up every afternoon, so I know how bad it is. But hopefully, when they get the other entrances open and the parking back there, hopefully some of that will be resolved. Because right
Hopefully.
now, they're all going into two entrances, and that's
Right.
it.
There's a third one that nobody really uses, but I'm not going to say which one because.
This is what you're using?
Yeah.
But it is a mess up there. There is no doubt about that.
That conclude your?
That's all I have. Yes.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, mayor's report. Well, I've got a ton of things, and I think that Councilmember Sperry's remarks reminded me that I have to come out South Union from my house, and I think he may also. And the two lanes, one dedicated just to left turns only, and the other one is through and right turn, is backwards. They need to have the left turn that requires a light and the through lane that requires a light to be in the same lane. And then the right turn, which gets the lion's share of the traffic, doesn't need a light to proceed safely. And I would like to have the markings on the road and perhaps some up on the pole that holds the lights, direct traffic that way.
Mayor, if I can interrupt, I'm glad to hear you say that, and I hope you can talk to UDOT, because when I was on the call with them, when they were doing it, what do you say, Matt? I hear you, but, and then they just ignored me. So I'll be on the call with you if you want to raise it with them again, because we said that exact same thing when they were putting the new lights in, that's how it should be, and they didn't do it, and it's caused a greter traffic issue. The way
Sometimes they
set.
have to see the problem in real life.
Right.
But I think it's happening. Let's see. May I address the homelessness issue that the county and state is facing. They are looking for winter overflow beds within the county, 300, and 450 permanent housing locations in the valley for the chronically, well, I don't know, chronically is not the right word, temporarily homeless. The chronically have other means to draw from. But those that have, lose a job, get a divorce, have an accident, have a health issue, and are temporarily unable to put a roof over their head of their own, there are some big movements, and we're having a meeting tomorrow on that. It will be online with the Homelessness Committee of the state. Being a mayor of a city that has a homeless shelter, I'm automatically on that committee. And so these are things that we will be discussing tomorrow. It's a slow government solution, but the government is aware of it, and we're going to be talking about that tomorrow.
What time is that?
2 o'clock? 2 o'clock. It is. See me after. I'll give you that. We had a second of 2 wonderful car shows in our city Saturday. The Cruisers for Kids. And I believe that they probably broke their record on contributions that go to the Shriners Hospital. They will be getting a number to me, and then we're going to go present a check in the next week or 2 up there for that hospital to care for these kids that have no means to take care of their problems, physical or mental. So I'll pass that on to you. But while we were there, a citizen came up to me and complained, nose to nose almost, about the restrooms in our park that need attention. And we need to get something going on over there. There's windows broken out that provide light and some security. And it's always been a cleaning problem, I know, at the restrooms, being open at certain hours. I looked in the men's room, and it wasn't that bad. There were toilet tissue that had missed the depository laying around, but it wasn't so bad. I didn't look in all of the restrooms. We had, I want to put kudos on our city management. And I don't know if it's a temporary or permanent fix. Department of Corrections had intentions of placing a mental health unit within Midvale for parolees. And it was in a corridor of our city that already has quite an issue. And we had several of their staff, and we kept them all for 2 hours probably. We got a conditional, we'll look elsewhere, but with government, you never know. And so we will keep that hopefully going in the right direction. I participated in the Hillcrest High School ribbon cutting. Oh my goodness, folks. You need to get up there whenever they can let you in and take a tour of that building. I mean, it's an eye knocker. You just cannot believe how beautiful that building is. The place that many of you may have gone to in the past, the old school, the auditorium is leveled, the old one. And the new one will not be ready until Thanksgiving, more or less. But you can tell already it's going to be a A+. facility for the theater and music operations at the high school. They can hardly wait. And the athletics with their field house and the views and the weight rooms and, oh my goodness. I think we'll see Hillcrest come again, become a athletic championship quality up there. This last week, I was also at our community building community clinic on Center Street, just west of the post office, between the post office and the tracks. And they have been receiving some interesting instruments from the Rotarians of Salt Lake Valley. They got 2 X-ray machines for their dental operation, smaller than that, probably about that big, 2/3 of this Kleenex box, that they can use in their dental operation for the indigent and those without money to get their dental work done. Now, if you don't know this, the CVC can do dental work on a pay-as-you-can basis. For some, that means they don't collect anything. From some, they collect a modest amount. From others that can pay more, they're graciously receiving more. But people walk out of there with implants, fillings, denture work of one type or another on from great people. They have professional dentists. They've got dental assistants coming from the University of Utah and Salt Lake Community College. And so it's a great training location, but there's no sense to have anyone in our city not get dental care because they don't have money. They just need to go there and talk and get things set up. It might be a little wait. Hopefully the toothache isn't that bad, but they can get help there. And we're grateful for that great organization, which the city funds to a degree. I think I'm running out of things that I had prepared. I'm at the end. So we'll now move to our next item on the agenda, the city manager report. Matt Dahl, we're glad to have you here.
Well, I appreciate that. I think most things that I was going to cover have already been discussed, so I will pass this evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the shortest report ever.
I know.
Okay, we'll now move to department reports. Community Development Report, Nate Rockwood. Lots going on.
Yeah, Hey, Mayor and Council, I'm glad to be able to talk to you. Just a few updates that I wanted to do. I'll start with the fun one. So we're continuing to work on the redevelopment of Main Street. We've presented a lot of different programs that we're working on. One of them that we did get a grant with the county for is the Art House, which is the former museum there on Main Street. So again, just a reminder, the council adopted that plan to make that an art house. We are continuing to develop that with the community development block grants that we got from the county. We're going to make some improvements to that. So we've started the plan on the renovations, started to meet with designs on how to make that art house come together. At the same time, we're putting together the sort of governing documents on how that facility will run. So we're doing those together. But everything is looking good for that. We're excited about that. We were kind of, this is a community art house that we want artists to work in, local artists to work together at, and then have the community kind of be able to come there. The COVID restrictions have made it so we've kind of held off on that a little bit. We'll still continue to make progress on that, but we expect to roll that out beginning early in 2022 after the improvements are made. The other quick, not as fun update, I just wanted to give you an update on the planning division within community development. Right now, pretty just kind of in a triage mode in terms of staff there. And the planning department continues to get a lot of applications. There's a lot of development going on. We're right in the middle of some very big projects. And the state has given a lot of direction on how land use code is put together. So we have a lot of text amendments that we need to be working on. We have a lot of development. We don't want to drop that level of service. So we did hire, and our new planner 2 is started last week. Elizabeth Arnold. I'm sure you'll see her as she'll start presenting items to you soon. But we're excited to have her. She comes from, she came from working in Wasatch County in the planning department there. We've also hired, put an offer out, and the offer's been accepted for a planning director. Adam Olson, who's has been working in American Fork for over a decade as the planning director there. So we're excited to get him on board. That'll take place on September 7th is when he starts. And then we also have, with Jason leaving, a senior planner position open, so we're actively recruiting for that. But we are excited to get to kind of rebuild our planning department. In the meantime, again, not wanting to lose some traction, especially on some of these code, or on these any development project that we have in the works or that have been submitted, and then as well as addressing all the text amendments that we need to do related to the legislature. We've hired a contract planner to do planning services. So you'll see her. She'll present items to the council. She's a former planner at Park City that I worked with a lot, and I'm excited to have her work. Very high quality planning there. So I've got her working on all of these text amendments. You'll start to see those coming forward related to HB 1003, 409, the subdivision process. Also, we've been talking about non-conforming uses in some of the single-family zones with garages. So I have her working on all those text amendments, but I'm also going to have her working on some of these big projects that we see on Center Street in the TOD zone, and then also projects that are coming with the shops at Fort Union. So some of those bigger development projects are right up her alley. She was the lead planner in Park City on the resort developments and some of the bigger hotel developments that were there. So certainly can handle anything that the development community can throw at us. But we're trying, with the quick turnover that we had, we're being trying to be as aware as we can to make sure things don't fall through the cracks. But there were just so many things going on and so many conversations that the planners have with different development community members that are in different stages. So it's really easy to inadvertently let things kind of fall through the cracks. So anything that you hear, let me know. And we'll try to stay on top of everything, but we are kind of in a rebuilding mode there. So I'm asking for a little bit of patience, I guess, but we are going to do everything we can to stay on top of that. So those are the updates that I have. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer that. them.
Kyle, I've had some people ask me about the art house, because I think we did during the car show, during Harvest Days, we were telling people that was an idea for Main Street. So those who are now asking me follow-up questions about that, do we have a timetable, like when, in a perfect world, when would that be open in Nate's world?
In the perfect world, it would already be open, but we would be able to have everybody coming in and then joining in. We're making a ton of progress. We need to do those improvements. That'll probably take a few months. We'll put together sort of a committee on how to select the artists, put that out as wide as we can to get artists from Midvale, but also some artists from just the Salt Lake community that might want to work in there and be part of our community. So in the perfect world, not in the perfect world, our timetable is that we will have this open early next year, early 2022. So,
Okay.
January, February.
There's a lot of interest in it, even just people I tell about it, they think it's a wonderful idea and they can't wait for it to take off.
Yeah,
I've talked to 2 artists who, would love to be able to showcase their stuff there. So I don't think you're going to have any problems finding people wanting to put their art in there.
No, we're excited about it. I'm excited about it. When I first came here and saw that building open up, that was the first thing that I wanted to do, was put that in there. I think it'll be great for the street. Cody, during our RDA discussion later on, has a bunch of the other sort of art initiatives and business initiatives that he'll talk about, and they all tie together and they all work together. It's kind of lots of things we're throwing at Main Street to make it function in a really interesting way. I think it'll be exciting.
Very exciting.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Nate? Thank you, Nate.
Thanks.
We'll next take care of our consent agenda to consider the minutes of August 10th, 2021, City Council meeting.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any comments or questions on the motion? Rory?
Councilmember Sperry.
Aye.
Glover.
Aye.
Robinson.
Aye.
Brown.
Yes.
And Gettle.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll now move to our action items. There are 2. The first is to consider Resolution 2021 R33, appointing Mariah Hill as Finance Director for Midvale City. Kyle?
Thank you, Mayor. This one is fairly easy. With the appointment of me as the Assistant City Manager and then hiring Mariah as Administrative Services Director, it would make sense to appoint her as the Statutory Finance Director for the city, where I previously had that position. She will handle the things required by statute, such as certifying the financial statements, certifying the budget with the State Auditor's Office, approving transparency, and that type of thing. Are there any questions about this appointment?
Questions?
I did get, I read some comments from your coworkers. So I sent it to 6 people, and since we appointed you last time, the other 3 responded back, which was a perfect 6 for 6, which has never happened. And I've been meaning to forward those to you because, they're all glowing, but I'm going to forward you all 6 of them so you can read the glowing reviews.
Put them in my journal.
Anything else? Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion on this.
Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2021 R33, confirming the mayor's appointment of Mariah Hill as the Finance Director of Midvale City.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Final chance to address a question on this motion. Hearing none. Rory?
Councilmember Glover.
Aye.
Robinson.
Aye.
Brown.
Yes.
Gettle.
Yes.
And Sperry.
Aye.
Welcome aboard. Glad to have you here, Our final action item is to consider approval of a two-lot final subdivision plat located at 7417 South, 410 East. Nate?
Here we go. You know, when I'm doing planning, minor subdivisions, then we're in triage mode here. So this is a relatively simple subdivision, but this is a two-lot subdivision, 740, 17 South, 410 East. This was taken to the Planning Commission and recommended to the City Council for approval. A public hearing was held at that point. All that's required on this is a approval of the City Council, I believe. No, sorry. There we go. I should have been doing this the whole time. So there's the property there. You can see it's just being subdivided with a smaller lot to the north, which you can kind of see there on the plat. The one condition of this approval is, let me go here. So what was recommended by the Planning Commission is to get the signatures on the plat, and then before the final subdivision is recorded, having a bond or a guarantee of the street trees, one at every 30 feet on the frontage. Working with Mr. Allred, his intention is to sell the north lot, and he has asked if there was an alternative on when the street trees were planted, and how that was handled. And so what I'm recommending to council is, rather than approve the condition 2 that's there, is to recommend the alternate condition 2, which is still guaranteeing the street trees at the same amount, on the same frontage, but instead of requiring a bond, that be done before the plat is recorded, that we would require that was done, either them planted or a bond prior to occupancy of the property on the north. We would record this requirement on the plat itself so that there would be a record of that, and then when that development is done, then we can check that the street trees were put in place, and that makes actually a whole lot more sense. If you go and look at this property and the way that the street is laid out, it makes a whole lot more sense to put those in later, and not require those now. Those can be grouped any way that they would like, and it would just make a lot of sense. And Mr. Allred agrees with that process. Sorry, that was probably the longer subdivision than it should have been, but there it is.
You're used to more complicated matters, Nate. It's fine. I need more explanation.
I'm trying to make this more complicated than it is.
So, you did great. On a related note to this, are we caught up on hiring for the city planner? And are we gonna have like a couple of city council meetings that are gonna be really full coming up because of this kind of lack of?
There is going to be a lot of, yes.
I'm just looking at this, I'm like, this is like one of the smallest agendas ever,
no.
and then you're up here and I'm like, uh-oh.
Kate
There's
and
a
I have
bottleneck.
and I have been working, so Alex, before he left, put together a whole list of things where he was on, and we're trying to keep up with that. Jason is adding to that same list.
And probably every day, right?
Every day, and things are coming in. I'm doing text amendments and things like that, so I mean, we're very slowly processing. But yes, you will see a big flood. Our next council meeting, actually, I think we've got like 14 items, planning items. Most of them are those simple subdivisions that Homes is doing. But yeah, we'll continue to see a lot. That's just the way it is.
Cool. Thank you for stepping up.
Any questions or comments on this action item? on this subdivision?
The applicant's here. Do you want to hear from him?
If he's here,
Do you want to say anything?
does the applicant want to add anything?
Richard Allred. I don't really have a lot to add, other than I decided to sell this off just because it's more than I want to take care of. And there's a space there. It's a private lane. I'm hoping to just have a single unit there, a home, and I have a person who has expressed interest in buying it, who wants to build a home for himself there. So I appreciate your consideration, and I look forward to having that done.
Thank you very much.
So if you want to approve, if council wants to approve the motion, then I would have council approve the alternate conditions, which are listed in front of you. Or make
All right.
any motion.
If there's no further discussion on this,
I have one thing, I mean, to disclose. So I've known the Allreds for years, and I've helped them with some of the legal work on this. So I've been involved and will recuse myself from the voting.
let's not have a tie vote then, and I won't have to vote.
Yeah, you can vote.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the two-lot final subdivision plat at 7417 South, 410 East with the following conditions of approval. The applicant shall obtain all required signature on the final plat Mylar. The applicant shall install or guarantee installation of street trees at a rate of 1 tree per 30 feet of frontage along 410 East. The required street trees may be clustered or evenly spaced, must be installed within 10 feet of the edge of the right-of-way, and must be selected from the city's street tree selection guide. These trees shall be planted or guaranteed by a cash bond prior to issuance of certificates of occupancy for the new unit when completed. A note indicating this requirement shall be included on the final subdivision plat.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Roy?
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Brown,
Yes.
Gettle,
Yes.
and Glover.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Thanks.
You're good to go.
Hey Nate, on a different note, I know our city street tree selection guide, we had talked in the past about updating that. I'm sure that's down the priority, but it's still on the list, right?
Like, none that'll drop fruit, right? Or isn't that?
Yeah,
like-
we actually have within the code, it's not in the zoning or it's not in the zoning code, but it's in the street sidewalk. Then we actually have reference to that, and we have the street tree selection in there. Alex and I reviewed that. I think it meets all of the requirements that we've wanted without, no dropping the fruit and no roots that are invasive, all that sort of thing. So I don't know that we need to amend that or change that. I think we probably just need to reference it more so that, and make developers aware that we actually have that selection and that's actually there, so.
I mean, and sorry, we're going off agenda here, Mayor, sorry.
Okay.
I mean, my recollection is one of the developments that was on, well, I guess it's still being done on Fort Union Boulevard, that when that came up, they had brought out an arborist to help them as they were planning, and the arborist had some suggestions on how to update it to some, I guess ours was referred to as very dated on trees. So I don't know if we're looking at that as far as trees where the roots wouldn't break up the sidewalk, or just other types of trees that would work better in the park strip, but
Yeah.
I can get that.
It could be
Contractors.
just the newer varieties have
Right.
come out and they're not in those. So it would probably be well to check with
Yeah, we could,
some landscape architects that,
I can follow up with the person that did that and try to get that info.
yeah, if you can do that, then we could update that and make sure that
Yeah.
it's up to date.
But I think you're right, Councilmember Glover. I think it's with newer varieties
well, they
of
keep,
trees. so-
yeah, they keep updating varieties and things, cleaner trees and.
We
they
want
do
like
better.
non-GMO trees in our
Yeah.
park strip and stuff, right?
USDA organic.
I went to
Organic.
Utah First Credit Union today to transact some business and parked in their back parking lot, and I noticed none of the trees around their interior of their back parking lot are breaking up anything, and yet they got nice leaves. I think they're the ones that kind of turn reddish orange in the fall, and they may already be on that list, but if that's, if you have not checked that one off, put it on your list, I would recommend those.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Nate. Okay, we're next going to have a discussion item to discuss the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, and the allocation of funds with Midvale City. Kyle, help us through this. It's very complicated. We need to know more.
Thank you, Mayor. Surprisingly, the ARPA regulations are actually easier than the CARES Act regulations, believe it or not.
Everyone just wants some of it,
Pretty much.
as we've heard every.
Yes. So those who aren't familiar what exactly ARPA is, which is an acronym for the American Rescue Plan Act, it was signed into law on March 11th of this year. Of the total allocation, $130 billion was allocated to local governments. And how the funds are distributed depends on if you're an entitlement or a non-entitlement city. An entitlement city has a certain population floor, which is 50,000. And they have to also be a CDBG entitlement entity versus a non-entitlement. Really, the only difference is for non-entitlement, their money comes through the state, and the state distributes it to the local government. The state doesn't have any authority to change the allocation. There's essentially the pass-through for that. We are a non-entitlement because our population is under 50,000, and we don't directly receive funds through CDBG. We will receive our funds in 2 tranches, which I think is a new word that the grant people like to use ever since CARES started, because I never heard tranche before the CARES Act came along. We have received our first allocation in July of a little over $2 million, and the second is scheduled to be distributed in July of next year. So our total allocation is a little over $4 million. One thing with that is we may receive additional allocations if cities within the state that are non-entitlement decide not to accept their funds, or they don't apply for their funds by the deadline. So I've already heard there are some small cities that are declining funds. I don't know what their allocations will be or if we'll see any of that, but there are some smaller agencies that don't think it's worth the time or effort, I guess. In short, what the funds can be used for, and there's a lot of subsections to this, but these are just general categories. So one is to respond to the pandemic and the negative impacts to the pandemic. Another is premium pay for eligible workers, which includes public safety and public works, those essential employees that aren't able to stop their job just due to the pandemic. New, that's vastly different than the CARES Act, is revenue reduction recovery. So if your revenues are reduced due to the pandemic, you're able to use some of these ARPA funds to cover that. And then the large one we've talked about probably ad nauseum, and you guys know more about this than I do at this point, is investments in water, sewer, and then broadband infrastructure. I did want to go over some of the requests that staff has already received from external agencies. The first one is our request, as we've discussed as we went through the water and sewer rate study, was we did put $3 million of our ARPA funds into that plan to help fund the capital projects for that. In addition, we have received a request from Unified Fire that was discussed by the Unified Fire Board for about $75,000 to reimburse them for expenditures that they've already paid for through the pandemic. As we, a few council meetings ago, the Boys and Girls Club did come and make a presentation that they were requesting $750,000 to forgive the loan on their building that the city currently holds. I do want to note, I am not sure if we would be able to use ARPA funds for that. If the council wanted to move that direction, it would require more research and more discussions with most likely the federal government to see what I could do with that, just as throwing it out there. The Unified Police Department has also indicated that they'll be putting together a request. I do know it was a agenda item last week at the board meeting. I haven't gotten to that part of the meeting yet to see what the discussion was on that. We have already told UPD, however, that the majority of our ARPA funds have already been allocated to water and sewer. And then finally, the Utah Leagues of Cities and Towns did hire a consultant to help with ARPA. That was already approved by the Utah Leagues of Cities and Towns. We have already received and paid that assessment. Due to the small amount of it, if the council chooses not to use ARPA funds to pay for it, we could find other places to cover that, but we've already paid it. So total the requests that we've already received outside of the $3 million we put to water and sewer is about $829,000. So with that, if I could get, what I'm looking for tonight is just some general direction on that $1 million of ARPA funds that we have remaining. So the first tranche we got has effectively been spent because we've put that towards the water and sewer rate study. Even though we haven't come back to the council with the list of the capital projects yet, essentially we do want that cash in the water fund because there is the possibility at some point we will find land for the tank we need in the future. And as you know, you can't wait to buy land when something comes up. So some of it is cash we just need in the fund. As we discussed through the budget process, the water fund is very low on cash balance right now. Looking at the second tranche, there's a few options that I've listed out as staff that could be looked at. One is, do we look at any of these other requests, or does the council have their own ideas of what they would like to use these funds for? One thing is I had discussed as we had gone through the water and sewer study was using that $1 million as a buffer for the water and sewer capital projects. As you probably know, inflation in a lot of areas is increasing right now. We did build an inflationary rate of 4% into the model for capital projects. The question is that going to be enough given the pressures that we're seeing in the market? And then also the unknown of what will happen when the federal government releases all of this additional money. There's going to be more competition to get these projects done. So that extra $1 million would help with construction inflation. Any factors that we didn't consider when we did put the water master plan into place. And I put mitigate additional future rate increases. And what I mean by that is, as we had discussed, every year we will review the water rates to make sure the assumptions we had put into the models were correct. If for some reason construction inflation is higher than we were expecting or costs are coming in higher than anticipated, that extra $1 million would help be a buffer so we wouldn't need to do rate adjustments to cover those costs. Another thing I did put on here that it's another thing that would need additional research is, as UPD had mentioned during the workshop, a number of cities are using their ARPA money to help cover these possible salary increases for the UPD officers. It is possible we could use some of that money to help cover those additional costs that we might experience depending on what the UPD board decides on. So I did put that as an option on the sheet.
I like that option.
And there is another option I didn't put on here is where we've effectively already programmed in that first tranche. We could come back staff could come back when the second tranche comes and have another discussion also.
I like that. I mean, I like having it with the requests, the unified fire and then the police, trying to have it there to help if that increase goes through, and then if we don't use it, I like putting it towards the water and sewer to help with that. I know there was another request for $750,000 that, while that organization does good, I think, putting the money towards the general expenses that most of our residents would see, it probably does more good for the average resident in Midvale.
I have a low appetite for that as well. So if it's going to cost you work, if there's a third council member that agrees, I think we can, like, move on from that.
I absolutely agree.
Okay.
Well, I agree too. It's just, we do a lot for the
Same.
Boys and Girls, and we put our neck on the line for them for a lot of, and we give them money every year.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna do anything, I would say, in years to come, maybe we'll give them a little more each year, but to take away their payments, because that's a bond. It's not like, I mean, we're gonna keep paying it and paying it and paying it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to waste your time with that. If there's a majority of council members that, you know, think it could be, I'm highest on water if needed by property, obviously. I worry about that all the time because the cost of property just keeps going up. So it's nice to have it, but, you know. I think coming back when it comes in, we can talk about it too.
That sounds good to me.
Other comments?
Is the timeline gonna be a little bit, because did we get, is it half and half, or did we get more in the first? And
It's half and half, and then we might, depending on if we get an additional allocation, if another city decides not to take their funds. But I don't think it's going to be a huge amount if we do get another small allocation. But you're right, it's essentially half and half.
So basically, we have 2 million more coming
Yes,
in 11 months.
yes,
1 million of that is already allocated to water and sewer.
correct.
So we have $1 million of ARPA money.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
So that can't help us with UPD for starting November 1st.
And where we haven't had a full discussion on the financial component of it, and I haven't had a full discussion with the city manager to have a recommendation to make to you, I can confidently say I can cover, or finance can cover the first year through ongoing money and one-time money. It's the future years that's going to be the concern.
I mean, yeah, I look at it as covering the first 6 months. And then after that, we're gonna have to come up with ways, because it's ongoing every year.
Right.
So that doesn't take out of our fund balance or anything to be able to get to where we need to be. Then we're gonna have the discussion of how we're gonna raise the money, whether it's gonna be property taxes or whatever, but yeah, we can't just keep using that.
And then what about the newest infrastructure bill that was passed?
I have looked into it, but there hasn't been full details on how that's going to roll out. We are, just as an FYI, the state has released their grant match program that I previously discussed, and we're preparing a proposal for that too.
For water?
Yes,
Because that is something, you know, if we get a significant amount of federal dollars for that, that we could use that for water and sewer. And then when we get our second, and I refuse to say the word tranche, because it's not a word that anyone uses, but when we get our second allocation of money, we would have then $2 million to do something with, rather than one.
correct. And as city management, we aren't trying to put too much emphasis on receiving this grant match from the state due to the amount that they've allocated and the need that has already been shown at other cities. So most likely, we're not going to get millions and millions of dollars out of this, but we won't really know until we put in an application.
Way to be a downer on that one, Kyle.
We could still go for millions and millions of dollars.
Billions.
Other comments for Kyle, questions?
Thank you.
I want to express appreciation for the citizens that have stuck out this meeting and stayed with us to the end. We're glad to have you here. You're welcome every 2 weeks. We'll now take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
We will reconvene in a couple of minutes with the redevelopment agency of Mobile City.
I thought we'd be a lot faster today.
looks like we have much of our crowd that's sticking around again. Good. I want to welcome you again and have our city recorder call the roll when she gets an opportunity there. Okay, Rosa, you're up.
Sorry.
Nope. you don't have
Board
to
Member
excuse.
Brown,
Here.
Robinson,
Here.
Glover,
Here.
Gettle,
Here.
and Sperry.
Here.
Thank you. We now open it up for public comments to the Redevelopment Agency of Midvale City. If anyone would like to address the agency, you're welcome to come to the microphone. Limit your remarks to 3 minutes, if you would.
This might be the
This,
first time.
this is a record right here
Ever had.
that's being set.
No pressure.
Let's give him an award.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Hello, my name's Elias McCam. I represent All Caps Art Gallery. That's my business partner over there. So we own an art gallery here in Midvale, and we specialize in everything art related. Before we opened our gallery, our main focus, and still one of our main focuses, is public art, so doing large murals, all that kind of stuff. So we're really excited to work with the city of Midvale for the upcoming art projects. We've met at the Art House a few times and talked about all the potential there and all the possibilities and stuff. And so I think this was just an opportunity for us to introduce ourselves, let everyone know that we're here and we're glad to help. Art's our passion, so we're excited to do anything and everything that we can to help move these projects forward and answer any questions, kind of bridge the gap between people that want art but don't know how to get it, and all of the process in between and all of that. So, thank you.
Where are you located?
So we're in Union Heights Shopping Center, over by, there's like a movie theater, and it's just like kind of a straight shot. On
Of
the other side.
78th.
And Sandy.
I think
Yeah,
so.
by Cinemark and
So,
Tsunami.
yeah, I was just telling them, like, on our business license and through all of our paperwork, it's Sandy, but everything else, like when we get our mail and do everything else, it's through Midvale. And that was like the one time that we just didn't know, and so we tried to contact City of Midvale, and they're like, oh, I think you guys are in Sandy, but everything else would be, it's like the one district that's like right on the cusp, so.
Yeah, you're a hybrid. You pay sales tax to both cities.
Yeah, it's great, but we like Midvale better, which is why we're here, so.
He didn't even flinch at that.
He's like, all right.
Hey, we just want to do our civic duty, you know, for the arts. So,
Well, you know, the car wash just down below you there is in Midvale, but the property on both sides of it are in Sandy.
well, if they have an opportunity to paint those walls, then we will paint all of them. That's what we do. So, it was pretty cool. Like, we used to just, and still do sometimes, we drive around and look for walls to paint, and we'll go in and talk to businesses and then say, hey, can we paint your walls? And they usually give us the runaround, but it was really nice to talk to Cody, and he was like, hey, that's what we're looking for. So that was like a dream come true for us. So we're pretty excited to be here and be involved. So.
What's the name of your studio again?
It's called All Caps Art Gallery. So throughout the week, we function as like a studio. So we're in there painting, doing art. We're out doing meetings, painting murals and stuff. And then usually on the weekends or at the end of every month, we do a street fair. So we hold like a big event where we shut down the road and we have a bunch of vendors come in and tents and live art, live music, all of that kind of stuff. And then we also do art shows. So we invite artists to come in, hang their art, and do like a fancy, people dress up nice and talk about art and all that kind of stuff.
Would you be interested in doing something like that on Main Street in Midvale?
Absolutely.
Like next weekend?
I don't know if we could, so on the 28th, we're having a street fair at Union Heights, which all of you are more than welcome to come. We would like to do what we're doing there on Main Street here in Midvale. And we've talked to some of the business owners, and everyone seems to be okay with it and excited about doing that. So,
Very cool.
yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elias.
All right. Do I just go sit down?
Yep.
Do I have to say anything?
No, you have to stand.
No?
Well done.
Should have made him say the Pledge of Allegiance or something. He had no idea what he was doing.
Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda to consider the minutes of June 15th, 2021.
Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve this item. Any comments or questions? Rory?
Yes, Board Member Brown,
Aye.
Gettle,
Yes.
Glover,
Aye.
Sperry,
Aye.
and Robinson.
Aye.
Thank you. Our next item is an action item to consider resolution number 2021-13 RDA, a resolution authorizing the implementation of the Neighborhood Housing Improvement Program by the Redevelopment Agency of Midvale City. And Patrick, lead us
Thanks, Mayor.
through that.
Thanks, everyone. I wanted to bring back this program that I brought previously, that just to get some amendments approved, based on some issues that staff experienced in trying to implement the program and to help us overcome some of the reasons that we were unsuccessful in acquiring some of the properties. I won't go into detail on each of the properties, but I will give some indication of why we were unsuccessful as I just go through some of the slides. I'll give you a brief overview as well of what the program is, just as a refresher. The program was intended to improve residential neighborhoods, to contribute to the overall quality of Midvale's housing stock, to encourage home ownership, support long-term housing affordability, and really to get rid of the blight that existed in some neighborhoods. To achieve these goals, the program identified, the program intended to identify, acquire, and redevelop single-family homes that were close to occupancy, that attracted crime, or that otherwise negatively impacted the surrounding neighborhood. The properties that were redeveloped would subsequently be sold to households that earned 60% or less of the area median income, with restrictions that were tied to the land, to ensure that the property would remain affordable. After unsuccessfully pursuing a number of the approved properties, we're looking to make some changes to the program. When the program was first brought to the board, it had two key goals: to eliminate blighted properties in neighborhoods and to provide affordable housing through redevelopment of these acquired properties. Since we originally adopted the program, we ran into some issues with each of the properties that we engaged with the owners on. On the screen in front of you is just a list of some of the issues. The original program and how we drafted it caused some sort of issues with criteria that we found hard to overcome. It was really narrow criteria that some of the properties and these qualifying criteria, after a certain period of time before we had a chance to pursue them, they no longer fit within this criteria for the program, so they weren't eligible to be pursued. Other issues that we had then were property costs. We engaged with our very first property, and after doing an appraisal on the property and engaging with the owner, they were looking for far more than what the agency was willing to actually pay for the property based on that appraisal. And then we also had individuals who were unwilling to sell, which also posed an additional challenge to us. The proposed amendments that we have are just to change the qualifying criteria so they're not so narrow that we can keep future properties on the list, give us a better chance to engage with them over time, and also to expand it to more than just properties that are close to occupancy. We're also going to keep it with vacant properties or properties that have a significant crime history. We're also looking at including agent costs, because one of the challenges that we had in approaching some of the owners was that when they saw that the agency or the city were looking to purchase the property, they thought they were going to be able to get a lot more for the property than we were actually willing to pay. We also are looking for an increase in allocated funds just to compete with the rising costs for housing in the area, as well as no longer requiring demolition for all properties. That was one of the previous terms of our original term sheet. We're only going to seek to do that in instances where it actually makes sense to do so. There are a lot of properties out there that do need some remediation and renovation, but they don't need to be knocked to the ground. And one other change that we're looking at is that staff can begin discussions with property owners before we get the approval of the board, just to get the ball rolling, speed the process up, and then bring it to bring a list of properties or individual properties as they come up to the board for approval at that point. And that highlights the amendments of what we're looking to do. I'm happy to take any questions.
I know we had identified 5 properties.
Six.
Did you, 6? Did you contact all 6 and we were rejected?
So the first 3 properties that we engaged with, we got quite a bit into the process with the first property, and what they were looking for in terms of price just started to skyrocket, and the property wasn't worth what they were asking for. So Matt was engaged in that meeting with me, and we kind of had to walk away from it at that point. The second and third properties were under contract when we went to approach the owners. Then there was 2 other properties that no longer met the criteria for the project. One of them is one that you and I had discussed previously, and that was a bit of a challenge because we were hoping to push for that one also. And then one of the property owners just wasn't willing to sell. They weren't interested in that. But of the 6 properties that we had, one of our focused properties that the board ranked relatively high on the list, a developer purchased that, got rid of the poor structure that was on that site, and built 8 townhomes in there. So whilst we weren't successful in actually building the affordable housing element of what the program sought to do, we did eliminate blight in the majority of cases. Not in all of them, we still have some issues, but we are willing to revisit some of the properties that didn't qualify under the original program, but widening the criteria, we may be able to pursue them again.
Yeah, the one house in my area that, had had all sorts of issues for years and years and years and years. I don't know if it was because you guys approached them or what, but
I think that was our number 1 on the list.
Yeah.
And that one was the one that we went after first. And
so the outcome was good.
It
looks
got the
way
ball
better.
rolling, which was really what like I said, it doesn't accomplish the entire goal of the program, but if we can get rid of blight in some of the neighborhoods, it does fit into that neighborhood housing improvement that we're really pushing for.
It was, when I was campaigning 4 years ago, it was the one house I was scared. Like, I'm not saying that like lightly. Like it was literally scary. And so I went back, after, we lost it. I'm like, man, this is night and day. So.
Yeah, it was scarier inside. I can.
Oh, you went into.
Yeah.
Okay.
So under the new parameters, the one that we discussed, would that qualify?
It could, yes. I'm not 100% sure the current state of it, but I think the new criteria is pretty broad that we could actually make it fit into that.
Well, if it qualifies, maybe talk to Chief Thomas. He can give you the current residence of each property owner.
Yeah, and Detective Wayne, who's doing our code enforcement, has a list the length of his arm for me as well of properties of interest. But as was the case with the original program, we're still going to focus this on single-family neighborhoods. That's the real goal for it.
My concern about this is housing prices are much different than they were 2 years ago when we approved this plan. So, then it was like we could maybe purchase like 1 or 2, and now can we purchase 1 with the funds that we allocated?
So one of the items was to increase the level of funding that would help us to be able to pursue a property. We may be able to purchase a property, and then depending on how we want to dispose of it or redevelop it, will determine when we would have funding coming back in through that sale of the property to move on to the next project.
Can we obtain funding, right? So,
We put in for a CDBG grant shortly after you originally approved the program, and the county wasn't interested in it because they saw that we were using RDA housing funding, and they just wanted us to continue
is
to
there a way
do
we
that.
can get any sort of mortgage loan, right? Because then you get it, we spend the actual cash that's there is to improve it or whatever,
Yeah.
and then you get rid of it. So, we're not paying full price for the
Sure.
the
Yeah,
property. Is that a possibility?
There's a number of ways that we can structure it. As was the case before, we will come back with each property and discuss it and see what project you want to do with it. If it's just a disposal of the property to a developer, we get something back immediately without having to put in much, we don't have to be the contractor ourselves. So yeah, that is a possibility for us.
I don't mind putting more money into it. It's just, if we're at the top of a real estate bubble, I don't want to pay top dollar for a blighted property that we might be able to get for cheaper in a year or two or
So
less.
one of the other things that we have right now is it's not just properties that have a structure on them. We're also looking at parcels of land, and that's part of the widening of the criteria. Some of them are not owned by individuals, they're owned by other agencies throughout the county, so we might be interested in pursuing something like that where no one else can do anything with it. And it puts us in a better
That's
position,
good.
I think. So
That's a good explanation.
that was part of the challenge with the program. We modeled it on a program elsewhere, and it didn't fit to Midvale's model, so that's why we're coming back, making adjustments as we need to, and hoping we can have a better go around of it this time.
Other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion then.
Mayor, I move that we suspend the rules and approve Resolution 2021-13 RDA adopting the amendments to the Neighborhood Housing Improvement Program.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the motion? Roy?
Board Member Gettle,
Yes.
Glover,
Aye.
Sperry,
Aye.
Robinson,
Yes.
and Brown.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Thank you. We'll now move to our discussion item, an update on the arts initiatives and Main Street Business Alliance. Excuse me. Cody.
Good evening, RDA Board. It's been a spell. Good to see you all again. I'm coming to you with an update on some of the progress that we've made with arts initiatives, as well as the Main Street Business Alliance. So first, for the art initiatives, I'm going to be going over 4 different initiatives that we have. So first is the citywide mural program. That is a program that was adopted for the city. This actually comes from the city's budget, but the agency is helping to move the program along and administrate it. And we've been going down Main Street asking for those interested to submit an application. We've received 2 applications for the program, and we are working with those applicants to complete the application and get their funding in order so that we can move ahead with that. But we're making progress there, so hopefully in the near future we'll see 2 new murals along Main Street. The second program is the Bingham Junction Mural Program, and we are working with actually Overstock to have a mural on the facade of their parking garage. That's on Coliseum and Holden right there. And the next one is the permission wall. Sorry, so for the...
Cody, on that parking strip, like the entire side or just a portion of it?
So there's 2 facades that I like, the one that's actually facing 700 and then the one that's facing Coliseum. I think those are both good facades for it. So it would be a $50,000 budget, because that's the budget for this year for that program. And so it would be, that would be the budget, those would be the facades, and then we would send out an RFP and see what artists propose. And then form a a design committee to review the RFPs and select a winner. And so I'm hoping by, in 2 weeks, I'll be in front of you with the term sheet for you to adopt for that specific project.
So it's going to be on both sides, the facade facing Coliseum and the facade facing 7?
I'm going to say that those are both good facades, and then whatever the artist wants to propose.
Okay, so
And-
like a wraparound is,
Yeah, exactly. We have the budget, we have these 2 facades are acceptable, if you want to just do it here or here, and then the design, the advisory board, design advisory board can decide ultimately.
sounds good.
The third art initiative we have is the permission wall. This started to get developed towards the end of 2019. COVID happened, and we thought that that might be a good one to put on the back burner. What the permission wall is it is an alleyway with good walls, basically, where people have permission from the city or from the agency. They sign a contract of, what they're going to put up, and they put it up, and it's volunteer, and the agency keeps an eye on the content and makes sure that there's nothing offensive or anything wrong, and basically the public just puts up art on the permission wall. They get permission, they put up the art, and we are working with business and property owners for a corridor connecting kind of the parking lot behind Main Street and between Center Street and First Avenue. We're working with Salt Salon and the owner, Jake Kapinga, and then Faith and Fat Loss, or it says Antiques on the facade of the building. So there's an alleyway right there. We're looking at that facade right now and making progress with those business and property owners on getting that program in place for that alleyway.
So the idea with that somebody puts art up, they do their mural or portion of it, and then we say, okay, it can be there for so long, and then somebody could paint over it, or what?
Yes, yeah. So there's no obligation that we keep it up, and they own the art, but we have access, we can take pictures of it, people have access to that alleyway, and we can remove art at any time.
In the same way, we can leave it up for as long as, if someone paints
Exactly.
the most beautiful mural ever, we don't want it, well, in 6 months, you gotta go.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, I just didn't know if there was a time, so, you put it up, and then people are competing, like, oh, this is my arch nemesis, right? They come in the next day, like,
Yeah.
apply, and be like, I'm painting over that thing, so.
Yeah,
I just didn't
the
know if there was a time
agency would
period.
the agency would administer it and keep track of where the art is and where new art can go, and so.
Okay.
And so once we have permission and kind of the outline of a term sheet with the property owners, then I'll be coming to you again with the term sheet for you to approve.
I hope we get some little trees and pretty birds.
Happy trees.
That's right, happy little trees.
Well, actually, yeah, Faith and Fat Loss, they are hoping for more an organic trees, bushes, shrubs, woodland animals. So I think that might be the theme for that wall.
Where is the wall located exactly?
So it's going to be on between First and Center on the east side of Main Street. There's an alleyway that connects that parking area to Main Street.
Gotcha. Where the market is.
So it's going to be between, there's a new salon, Salt Salon, and then also Faith and Fat Loss. It's between those 2 businesses.
Unrelated
Entities.
note, but if someone can explain to me faith and fat loss, I was a little confused every time I see the sign, I'm like, what am I doing here? Are you losing faith and fat at the same time?
I think you're losing fat through faith.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Ron Williams Ministry.
And another fun fact, it is a Pokestop.
Oh.
Just for anyone who brings Pokemon,
Okay.
it is a Pokestop.
I don't think Dustin's going to be on their commercials.
And then the fourth initiative that is going to be rolling forward is a Main Street. It's going to be a public art program for the Main Street CDA. So Bingham Junction RDA has an public art program. You've approved 2 statues, one at the park, one by the track station, and then we're working on the mural with Overstock. So I'm going to be presenting a similar program for the Main Street area. And the art house, I think Nate has done a great job covering that. So if there's any other questions about art initiatives, happy to address them. If not, I'll go on to the Business Alliance.
I have a question or thought.
Yes.
I don't know how much UDOT would like this, but it would be cool to look into if we could do murals on the sound wall in the Adams Street Park corridor, right? Because they're just staring at these like brownish walls, so it would be cool if we could, whether it's community, sometimes you have like a kid mural or something, but there's a lot of space there. So I don't know if we could talk to them.
Yeah, I'll look into
about
that.
it.
And Cody, I've heard the same thing. We have another wall on Rio Grande behind the avenues. So as you go east, down the avenues, it all ends in a wall, sound wall.
Yeah, that's true.
And a few of the neighbors have talked about getting murals on those, as much as they love to go out and stare at the wall. Probably like to stare at art a little more.
Okay. Yeah, so we had the Bingham Junction art, we did the utility box wraps. So we've already done this where we've partnered with, another entity, which was the power companies for wrapping their art boxes. So I'll look into that with you, possible partnership with UDOT. All right. Any other questions about art programs, art initiatives? All right. The Main Street Business Alliance. So this is an initiative that is called out in the small area plan as well as in the Main Street CDA budget. And what it is it's a pretty crucial component in bringing together the businesses in the Main Street area. If we want to propose any initiatives in the future that requires their collaboration, forming a parking district, forming a special assessment area. This is really laying the groundwork in a very crucial way. So over the past 4 weeks, I've been doing outreach, contacted 60 businesses directly in the area, talked to them, promoted this business alliance idea. We had a kickoff meeting wherein 10 businesses were represented, and 5 businesses contacted me after the fact and said, thank you for the updates, really want to be involved, excited about this. So I feel like at this very initial stage, we've got good buy-in. At that meeting, we discussed how the organization is going to be governed, and it's going to be governed with a chair, and Tammy Ross of Main Street Theater volunteered to chair. And we also discussed having events and more promotions on Main Street, and the next upcoming event that the Main Street Alliance is going to be sponsoring in connection with the agency is going to be a Halloween activity on the 30th of October. So Halloween's on a Sunday, so this is going to be on the Saturday before in the afternoon. Businesses are going to be decorating their storefronts, handing out candy. We're going to have music, public art, and other activities. And so that's the next event that's going to be held from the Alliance. And then on the upcoming meeting, September 7th, I'm going to be doing a budget amendment proposal and be proposing a budget for supporting the Main Street Alliance, Main Street promotion, and events.
With the event on the 30th, are we going to be closing down Main again, or is that?
Yeah, that'll be the intent.
And the music that's going to be playing is going to be Halloween, scary themed music. Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. It'll just be Monster Mash, just for 5 hours.
So Heidi wanted to ask a question, but she was too embarrassed. Is Tammy Ross related to Bob Ross?
No, she asked me that too.
You'll have to go to a show and ask her.
I don't want to stay here anymore.
Any other questions about the Main Street Business Alliance?
hopefully they'll consider doing something for Christmas as well. As everyone up here knows, I'm a huge Christmas lights, music, everything Christmas. So, you know, Halloween's great, but it would be really cool to have something around Christmas time on Main Street as well, so.
Yeah, I
hopefully
envision
in the works.
a budget for 5 events: Halloween, Christmas, a spring event, and then 2 in the summer. And then we'll have the new fiscal year.
I think we'd support that.
Great. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cody.
Thanks, Cody.
Well done. I think we set the record for interrupting you on that one.
Motion to
Sorry,
adjourn.
Cody.
Get the heck out of here.
So, I was gonna mention this, I totally forgot.
Did we adjourn?
Cody, do you know who Bob Ross is?
Cody.